So recently, Mark, you edited a video for Content Monsta.
Hmm.
Unknowing to me, it had at least 5 to 7 AI generated video clips in it.
I'm very sneaky.
And the only thing that threw me off that made me think about it being possible AI was because the video that I thought was stock was too specific to what we needed it to be for. And I know that stock video is never that specific.
I'm wondering as we go if the ability to do that is gonna change the expectation, obviously, of people expecting things to be that specific.
Yeah,
And when it's too general, it's gonna look uninformed or lazy or
stock
just
imaging.
yeah. You're in other words, instead of the AI sticking out, the stock imagery is gonna
Yeah.
be sticking out.
To give context of what this situation was. So in the video, we were talking about remote video production,
Yes,
and I think I said something to the effect of, you don't want to disrupt your office, and
all
you
this
don't want
equipment and people and
right. And so the video clip had an executive in the office. He's walking in there, putting his hands up, holding his head because there's all these video camera cases and equipment in the middle of his office.
a ridiculous amount of them.
Ridiculous amount. And now that's something that you wouldn't find in stock imagery because
Huh.
who would set up all that stuff for a rare picture of an executive getting upset at flight cases and cameras in his
Sure.
office? It just wasn't realistic for stock imagery, but it was perfect for what you needed it for.
Absolutely. But I'll also say I've definitely found where there's stock video or imagery that I think should exist.
Hmm.
I'm shocked that it doesn't exist. And I was able to create it. Like we were working on a project with one client. We needed a shot of a sports stadium with flat screens displaying and a big crowd and a game ongoing. I couldn't find that anywhere that it showed that stuff, and probably because the flat screens always have copyright
Commercial.
or trademark
Yeah.
commercial stuff on them. I was able to create it, and by adding in some nice sound effects and a little bit of little visual effects to it, and it was only on the screen for about 2 or 3 seconds. It sold it as being real, but it was still specific. I needed a stadium with a game in play with flat screen displaying that we could visibly see that they were on. And because the script called for that, right? So, and I think about also we've done a lot of work with medical clients in the medical field and health field, and we've needed specific scenarios that in the only stock footage we could find had equipment in it that's outdated or equipment in it that it's not what you would really use, or the environment's not right, or it may be as simple as everyone in the shot, everything's right, but everyone is a certain race and it doesn't provide enough diversity. So you have to alter that to meet all of the considerations that you need to be politically correct, to be authentic to the environment you're talking about, and to have the action and angle and lighting and time of day that is consistent with everything else that you're talking, and pacing too. So anyway, that's the types of specifics that may be more necessary. And the more specific you get, the more you don't have to compromise and cover up the things that don't work.
In that same project, I think I know what project you're talking about because we did a large project with a large healthcare firm company.
Yeah, management firm, yeah.
Yeah, and something we learned, and this is over the past year or two. So we're always testing AI and pushing the limits of what we can do and how we can add it to our workflows. And what we learned during that process was you talked about specific video clips for B-roll. Now, with current where we are now, and this happened over the past year, we could take a photograph that they already
Mm,
have. Like, so let's say, for example, a year or two ago,
sure.
they had a
A
photographer.
brand blessed photograph.
Brand blessed. I can't say that too many times, but they had a photo shoot at some point in the past that included actual people, actual locations, actual logos on their coats. That was all there, but that was done for a time when they needed photos for, say, a brochure or a website banner or whatever. We were able to take some of those existing photos and animate them for B-roll, for video B-roll. B-roll, to those who don't know, is like the clips you put on top of a conversation to display or explain what's being said.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone said, for example, our surgeons are specially trained in the latest technology, it would be hard to get stock footage of the latest technology. It'd be hard to get their logos on the doctors in stock footage. But if they have a photo of that, we could animate it, and you only need 2 or 3 seconds of a camera panning around the room with those doctors there. So that became part of our workflow to say, now we have a new tool. We can use AI to generate B-roll from existing photos, and B-roll that's very, very specific to the needs of what we need for that video.
But I think we're talking about here, other than just kind of going through the secrets of the trade, is that the environment is very obviously evolving quickly in front of us. Almost to the point when we get to that thing, it's behind us now, and the next thing's lining up.
Yeah.
But in every instance, there's still a human element that's required to integrate that technology with other materials, other content, to think about even what that should be. How do you know what that, people have talked about, I think in an interview that you had on the Business of Marketing podcast, I think someone was mentioning that a new job is going to be prompts.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a job someone's going to have, is to know how to develop proper prompts for AI, right? And knowing the prompts to do and how to maneuver the AI to get the result that you want, so it meets the creative vision.
Let me give you an example of that,
Is important.
because when I
Sure.
first started playing with Midjourney just for still images, I had a breakthrough moment when I realized that my experience in cameras and lenses gave me a huge step up on how to create images, because I realized, I can say a 50 millimeter lens at 1.8 aperture. I didn't know I could do that. And when I did that, AI understood that and gave me the same background blur bokeh effect that I wanted based on
Sure.
having the knowledge. Now, anybody couldn't have done that because they wouldn't have known how to describe the right lens, the right aperture, the right focal point. I could do that. And when it came to making B-roll, I could say a slow pan to the right, or a dolly up, or, slow motion and because those are video terms that, I guess I could say I'm a videographer. I've done lots of video. I know those terms in order to make the best prompt. So yeah, if you're, whatever profession you're in, the language and experience you have from that profession helps you make better prompts. If you're a marketer struggling to create content that's truly unique to your brand, here's the key. Your experts and executives are your most valuable content assets. Conversational content like videos and podcasts featuring your team stand out above all other content. So, instead of creating content that sounds just like your competition, start leveraging the unique voices inside your company. Thought leaders and authentic conversations build credibility and engagement. At Content Monsta, we specialize in remote content production, meaning we coach your people to be comfortable on camera, then we capture and produce high-quality videos and podcasts featuring your team and customers. No need for expensive production crews, long production plans, or complex setups. Want to see how it works? Visit contentmonsta.com today to learn more.
I think we can see this as a word of encouragement to people out there, that at least at this moment, as I see it, no, even though there's a lot of big deal people out there, very understandably talking about there's only so many jobs that are still going to exist in 2050 or 2060. The rest are going to be taken by AI and all that stuff. At least for the time being, the AI doesn't feel. Editing and creating content, especially video content, requires the human to understand how the tools and the materials that you're using make someone feel. Because from that is where the action happens. I made you feel motivated. I got your heart beating because we used this music behind the imagery. I chose to go to a shot that goes from the ground and goes to a higher angle as we look at that building and not just a static view of the building, because coming from the shot that was before it, it puts you in a new moment of excitement. So I knew that from experience as a producer or director and editor, right? So I'm going to tell AI to, if I'm using AI, to create that version of that image, or to design an image a certain way. I was just generating a whole bunch of um, uh, still images to put together in a video, and it didn't matter how I described it. Sometimes the AI didn't understand what my intention was. So it technically gave me what I asked for, but that wasn't what I meant. I could say an exciting, dynamic, vivid colors. What does that mean? Does that mean a whole bunch of vivid colors of purple, or does that mean the colors of the rainbow?
You're
So
making me think about when you compare. You use the word producer, which is of course what we do. We produce video, we produce podcasts. But think about the famous producers. Let's say Spielberg. Think about how technology changed from his first film to his last film, but it still had the value because of the director, right? We still name movies and we still brag about, oh, this movie is by that director, because even though the tools may change, that
the vision.
feel and that vision has to come from the director. And so whether you have, animation or green screens or actors on fake stages, there's still a director that's saying how things should go and feel. There's still somebody to go, cut, that didn't feel right, do it again. That same thought process applies to AI. It applies to how do we get content out of AI and how much the human still needs to be involved in the process to get content out that is designed for humans.
I don't think we're over. I think we're learning we have a new role in the process. Maybe I had to lift the tools and bring them from here to there, but when I got there, I still needed to know where they go. Now I found a tool to help me lift it so I don't break my back, but I still have to know where they go.
Yeah.
And even if a AI could tell me where they go based on, extrapolating data from where it's gone in the past, that doesn't mean that it knows what I want to do next, or why I want to do it next, or how I feel about it, or whatever. So we still have an integral role in that process. And here's the lesson, if you will. We have to embrace that and start to formulate our process, our expectations, and our vision about what's possible now that we understand that role, instead of pushing against it and trying to keep a bloody grip on what we used to do.
Possible. I don't want to lose that word, because
Yeah.
we spoke about this last week, where
Yeah.
there's certain content we can create today that we would not have created before simply because it wasn't feasible. Like, for example, you're doing a video and you want a original rock song about that event,
Right.
but you don't have budget for that. You're just doing a video. Now, go back 10 years ago, you'd have to hire a songwriter, a band, a recording space, an engineer, all those things. You could easily say it's not worth it. It's just not going to happen. You will not get an original song. Now, there's multiple platforms where you can just say, hey, give me a song about this. 1 minute later, you have a full rock band recorded song for that thing. Something that may not be ready for a chart topper, but it simply would not exist if you didn't have the tool to create it.
What that also means is that, using your example, let's say that you were building the entire concept around the fact that this song existed. But in the past, your boss might have said, That's a great idea, Lee, but our budget's $500 for this thing. You can't spend $5,000 just for the song. So now you can, because if you're building it around the song, the video can only, or the project can only exist because now the song can exist. And that makes an entire new possibility. And then you can look across your company, for example, and say, there's departments of my company that we would never spend budget on to create content assets like this. We would never do a unique video. We could do this version and customize it for each department, because then they've got their own version of it and they feel included, or they can communicate things about safety, or they can communicate things about their initiatives. But right now, usually we would save those budgets for just our marketing department to drive sales and not even any internal reason. But that all changes now because you can envision and say, you no longer have to say, here's my budget. Here's what I can imagine. Here's what I know is possible. I'll just do those things. And that's all we can do. What more can we do? Now you can say, here's what I wish I could do. And there's a good chance that that is possible to make happen, and probably within your budget.
Have you ever thought about doing a podcast for your business? And if you have, you probably have some questions, and we understand that because podcasting isn't for every business. That's why we've created a tool called podcastornot.com. If you go to podcastornot.com, you can take a quiz that gives you a full assessment of the strengths and weaknesses you may have in terms of if you're ready to start a podcast and how it can benefit your business. Now, we know podcasts are a great marketing tool and a great source of content for all businesses, but maybe you're not there yet. So take this assessment at podcastornot.com. We'll give you a full report that you can share with your team about, are you ready, and is a podcast a fit for your business? So go to podcastornot.com, take the quick quiz, and get a full assessment of should you start a podcast for your business. Back to the content. So in addition to now we have things we can do that are possible because it's within budget, it's reasonable, feasible. Since we're content creators, Content Monsta, we produce videos and we produce podcasts. I've also seen from an operational standpoint that we're able to do things at a greater volume and more efficiency because of AI that we couldn't have done before. In fact, depending on when you're watching this video, I am presenting at Content Marketing World this year. And I think the title is something like AI plus automation for your content, something to that effect. And basically, the thought of this presentation came out of the fact that Content Monsta, we've been, every company has these ceilings they hit, which is, do we hire somebody else or do we fine tune our process? And so when we hit those walls, those ceilings, over the past year or two, we've of course had AI to consider, like, do we automate this? Can AI do this before we add another head count? And so for us, it's almost always, we have some that are business functions, but we have a lot of content functions of how do we improve this workflow using AI and using automations. And I think one of our most successful ones is probably in our podcast process. I know that, and it's funny because when I see it work, we built it once, like months ago, and we may fine tune it. But just to give a quick overview of how it could work and what I'll be teaching at Content Marketing World, a video clip, for example. If somebody on our team creates a video clip and puts it in a particular folder, I always say they drop it in this folder and it pops back up on LinkedIn. There's a lot in between that pops back up because it hits that folder. It goes into a workflow that recognizes that, transcribes the video, looks at our framework for how a LinkedIn post should be written. It writes the post. It creates a title. It puts the draft in our scheduler for our social scheduler. Now, this is where I'd like to put a human in the loop. Typically, we don't let it automatically publish. We put a human to say, give this a look before it publishes, but it could go ahead and publish. And then it gets published. Just as recently as a year ago, someone would have had to upload the video to transcribe it to one platform, download that, write a LinkedIn post manually, which may not be consistent because every a person's they're gonna do what people do. A bunch of different uploads and a lot of work. So basically, we've removed all that process to where the file gets put in here and it's done. It could be no more than one click of publish. That's AI plus automation, and we look for every opportunity to use AI and automation in all our workflows. And it's not just tools, because
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you right now, when I do this presentation, I'm not going to go through a list of cool tools because we've seen that presentation before. The
Sure.
tools always change.
Right.
I'll be glad to give away our tech stack, but who knows what it's going to be 6 months from now. So,
Right. Well, I think there's also another really important thought of what you just said that just kept coming to me. Using this automation example, it took a lot to build that.
yeah.
It wasn't a 20-minute process. It was a lot of knowledge, research, and execution and building to be able to plop something in a folder and have it do all those things.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, when it comes to AI or automation of any type, I think the vision, in fact, we just ran into this today with someone we're talking about a potential client relationship with. Their vision is once we did some of the front end work, we can pretty much push a button and pop out all the stuff going forward. That's not true. We still have to manage that process. We have to make sure that it stays consistent and not broken. There's still editing to do with the output to make it be in the packaging they want it to be. There's still a lot. It's just that our role has changed. It's not gone. It's
I want to
still
give an
involved.
example of that. In that same workflow I mentioned, an example of monitoring is there's two places that we have to monitor. Now, first of all, like you said, it did take time. Probably took a day to build this workflow and test it. That's one thing. Two, for every client that we use this workflow on, and this is just one workflow, we write a prompt specifically for that client so that whatever it writes is in their brand voice and that it ends up on the same note that they want it to be, whether it's a call to action or a question or whatever.
Right.
But it has to be written in a way that sounds like them. And that has to be done for every individual person, every individual company. The workflow I have for business and marketing has to sound like something I would say, or benefits business and marketing or Content Monsta or A. Lee Judge. But for a client, it has to be their voice. So that's one thing. That prompt is a long prompt designed based on their brand, their voice for them. The next thing is algorithms change. When we first told it, this is the best practice for how a LinkedIn post should look, write it this way, that was good at the time. But 2-3 months later, that format's changed. We have to rewrite that prompt to say, look, no longer do this, do that instead. Before it might have been a hook, end with a question. Now it could be a hook, a subhook, do not end with a question. Do not use bullet points. Whatever the flavor of the algorithm of the month is, we have to monitor those things. So AI plus automation is great, but as you mentioned, a human has to, I suggest, not only be in the loop, but also review that process often.
I liken this in my own head to you used to have to work with your own individual chef. And that's the only way you could get food, let's say. Now you can go to a restaurant and they have processes and workers and systems set up, and now they can serve you a meal faster through those established processes, but there's still a lot going on to make that possible. Then you can get DoorDash or whatever and have that delivered right to your door. But that means now there's a DoorDash driver and there's an infrastructure set up to make that happen. It's not now that someone's pushing a button and the food shows up at your door. There's new things built to make that possible. Your end of things allows you to now imagine, I don't have to go and find a chef and sit down with them. I don't have to go to a restaurant in order to get that food. I can just go beep and it shows up at my door in 15 minutes. That's amazing. My life is so much better. You know what that means now? It means I can fit more in my day. It means I can imagine the possibilities. It means I can decide in the moment, you know what I love? Indian. Boop. I don't have to think about, can I get a reservation at an Indian restaurant and go and it's there and I have to drive it. But none of that matters anymore. But it's not that it just got diluted down to that result. That result is what you feel. That opens up possibilities for you. But there's all of these things that are now created to make that possible. And I think the mind shift a lot of clients and content users have to make is that the existence of these new tools does not mean content is in a vending machine now. It means that the way it's being done has changed. So the people that you have as your partners in making it happen have to be people that understand how to use those new tools and methods so that these new possibilities exist for you. But it hasn't eliminated the need for those partners or the support people, because you can only get so much food from a vending machine and only so much type and so much quality. The good stuff is made to order.
And Marc Raco has the last word. That's it.
There you go.
If you're still here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. This is our behind the scenes where Marc and I talk about the things that Content Monsta is working on and how it can help you. And we just chat, and we want to share these conversations with you. So subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you next time.